Hello everyone, welcome to the garage. I'm Fast Rod, and in this video, I would like to tackle a question that I'm sure some folks out there might have. That is, I promise to break down the vehicles of Fallout. Um, I, would- I do plan to start with Fallout 4, and kind of work my way back. Um, I may tackle Fallout 76. I have some things going on with that, but um, the like I said, the overarching question may be how. How am I going to break them down? Just how am I going to tackle the different segments of uh, vehicle repair and vehicle modification and stuff like that. Mostly repair and how that could even apply to the Fallout universe, given that seemingly vehicles in the Fallout universe vastly differ from the vehicles that we have in our real world. How could our real world categories apply to the how could we break them down into categories that kind of fit in with the Fallout universe? And I've had some time to think about this. With that said, um, there are, as I've learned, about 11 different categories for our real world cars. Our real world cars have 11 different categories. Um, and I will go ahead and list them off real quick, starting with engine repair. Engine repair being obviously pretty self-explanatory in the name. It's literally physically repairing things on an engine. Um, Next, engine performance. Once again, pretty self-explanatory. That's how efficient and effectively does a vehicle's engine, be it V6, four-cylinder, V8, V10, V12, whatever kind of engine it is, diesel, gas, how efficiently does it work and how effectively does it work? How consistent is the horsepower? How effective, how effective the torque, how consistent is it, and how much, horsepower and torque does it make? How efficient is it? Does it make 60 horsepower out of a 60 liter, or is it 200 horsepower out of a 2 liter? That kind of thing. That's what engine performance has to deal with. Next is hybrid fuel cell vehicles. Hybrid and fuel cell vehicles. That's a bit janky to say, but anyways, that really has to pertain to the Fallout universe because that is fairly on the nose, given that those categories, as far as I have it, understood, and as far as I recall them, they were and are alternatives to gasoline and diesel. They are the alternate, you know, power sources or alternative fuels for vehicles. Be it hydrogen, be it electric, those kind of things. That's really what it has to do. Of course, the the textbook actually, because all this is courtesy of my automotive textbook that I used for pretty much my college degree. Of course, that segment and specifically hybrid and fuel cell is actually a small fraction of the book because at the time of that book's writing, those were up and coming technologies. They weren't established. They were nowhere near on the level that they are now. On top of it being a rather old book written back in 2015, 2016, somewhere about there. So fairly old book, with fairly outdated information by this point in time, time of this recording, 2023. The next category and of real world cars is going to be electrical and electronic systems. This is a very at-home topic for Fallout cars because, um, as we know, the electrical and electronic systems in the Fallout universe vastly differ from ours. They somehow developed very futuristic technology that we don't even have in our current day with analog technology. I briefly explained this in passing in another video, but the biggest difference that I feel between Fallout cars and real world cars is that our real world cars work off of digital technology. Um, to briefly explain what digital and analog, which is what their cars seem to run on and work with, and their electronics and everything seem to run and work with, is that digital technologies and digital electrical signals are an on and off switch. That is how I explained it in that video. Analogs are never truly off. They're almost off, but there's a little bit of current running through it. And um, that really is just the difference between something that is digital and something that is analog. An analog system cannot be fully turned off. It will approximately reach zero, but never true zero. It is never truly turned off. There's always a smidge amount of electrical current running through an analog system versus a digital signal. A digital signal will actually be either have current running through it or not. Um, and so with that category of real world cars, like I said, it very much falls into and very much, is very pertinent to Fallout vehicles. So electrical and electronic systems. The next category is heating and air conditioning. This one is surprisingly as well pertinent as the electrical. Um, because if you look at the designs, and I'm obviously going to be showing a couple of them on screen, uh, if you look at the designs, these vehicles have some very elaborate windows and, as I said in a previous video, greenhouses. The roof of the car, very elaborate, very, very intricate design that if someone tried these kinds of designs in our real world, um, heating and air conditioning engineers will look at you, and if you say, oh, can your current, heating and air conditioning unit, HVAC unit, work on something like this, they'll look at you and laugh because they would be like, no, man, you would probably need one in the front, one in the back, and probably in the middle just to try to keep a regulated temperature. So it very much, raises the question, how did Fallout cars keep this stuff if they even had heating and air conditioning and HVAC unit in the vehicles? Next up, brakes. Because for everything that we've seen on vehicles in Fallout, brake systems, a way to stop the cars, seems to be something that is fairly ignored. Now I understand, obviously, kind of circling back around to, my early videos where I say that it's due to engine limitation and asset, control, having to mitigate some assets and omit some things because, well, it would just be crazy to constantly be finding, brake parts, brake lines, tubing, levers and such in, containers and bins, and it would just, kind of have a massive problem in their hands trying to code, much less illustrate and 3D render all these parts. It would be crazy. I understand, but um, I mean, even some of the scenarios that Bethesda Game Studios and Obsidian Entertainment put together in the 3D games, cars just have either a hard time stopping or don't seem to have stopped at all, and very much have a shopping cart brake system where you have to hit something in order to stop. In which case, seemingly the occupants kept going while the car stayed 5, 10, 20 feet behind them, and that's fairly scary. That's a very interesting question. Um, steering and suspension, basically how a car goes over bumps, goes over dips, goes up hills and the like, and how it maintains such heavy structures because the cars in the Fallout universe are rather heavy cars. If you try to render these kind of cars in aluminum or steel in the real world, good luck, because you would be looking at easily 2 to 3 ton cars, and trying to find leaf springs, trying to find uh, coil springs, shock absorbers, any kind of suspension parts that could handle, 2, 3 tons of, you know, big American car. That's quite the task. And yeah, I'd love to explore that. Um, Moving on from that, we have manual drivetrains and axles. Um, Basically, manual transmissions, shifting gears, stuff like that. We don't really see a whole lot of that in these cars, which is very interesting because the vehicles that inspired these cars very much did. They very much had manual transmissions, especially Chrysler. They were trying to build an automatic transmission. And if you look at the early, semi-automatics, because there wasn't a clear-cut jump from just having manual transmissions, selecting gears and whatnot, to just put it in, put it on the D, basically put it on drive, which is what it stands for. Put it on drive, or put it on reverse, put it on first, second, third, and then drive. There was no clear, this year and then the next year we have this fully developed. That's not the way it worked. It was a very much a gradual thing, especially on Chrysler. Um, if any of you have a chance, go check out some videos. Um, go check out the evolution of the automatic transmission for Chrysler. You'll find out some very interesting stuff. Or just try to find videos on old 1940s, 1950s Chrysler cars. Um, you'll find some very interesting stuff. Um, yeah, so manual transmission and transaxles, uh, did they exist in the Fallout universe? How would they have existed? Up until when did they exist? Were they, a continuous standard? It, Very good questions. After that, uh, automatic transmission and transaxles. And I do have to say it that way because automatic transmissions are the traditional truck style transmission that goes from the front, points out to the back of the truck. A Now, some of you might be like, I thought the thing that's in my little front wheel drive car, my little Kia, or, in my Honda, or in my, Chevy, in my Ford, I thought that was a transmission. Yes, in layman's terms, your mechanic is going to refer to it as a transmission just for simplicity's sake. But in reality, they're not supposed to be calling it a transmission. They're actually supposed to be calling it a transaxle because it's actually going side to side, and it has the axles going, from side to side on it, um, alongside the whole casing that houses all the parts and everything. Um, yeah, they were originally called transaxles. Like I said, for simplicity's sake, a lot of people just refer to them as transmissions, but the proper name to them is transaxle. Um, but uh, tomato, tomato. That's just how it goes. But yes, that is also another category. How do we get, you know, do we get, just how do they work in the Fallout universe? How would they plug in? How would the automatic transmission transaxle history apply to them from our real world into the Fallout universe? Um, Especially when you take into consideration, a, atomic engines. How does that even, I didn't even touch upon that in the engine repair and performance section. But anyways, moving on. Um, a category that I have decided to include being auto body, chassis, and chassis design and repair. Um, I say it that way because that really is a whole subsection of car repair. You might think, oh, I have a, dent. I just take it to my mechanic and he'll take care of it. Actually, that's not true. Most mechanics will tell you up front, oh, I don't do that kind of stuff. And they say that for a reason because there are places dedicated to that stuff, which is an, a body shop. They'll tell you, oh, go to a body shop. Oh, I know a buddy of mine who has a body shop. He'll take care of you. Why can't you do it? Well, because vehicle repair and body work are two distinct things. Um, Auto body, as we refer to auto body or body shop, work is a whole different set of skills to that of engine repair or transmission or any of the other categories that I've mentioned so far. They're vastly different. Um, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a very keen eye for detail, and you've got to be willing to do things over and over, as it's commonly known, in an insanity cycle or insane cycle. Uh, as car people know it, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing twice and expecting a different result. That very much applies to auto body and auto body repair. Um, and I mean, they even tried talking about Fallout universe and auto body design, and also chassis, because believe it or not, cars, especially back in the days that Fallout cars are taking inspiration from, a lot of cars were not what we know to be unit body construction. They were they were called body on frame. So literally, there was a whole um, metal ladder under the car, and the part where you sit in, where everything kind of almost bolts to, the doors and the windows and all that stuff, all that sat on a body that sat on top of that ladder frame, as it's called. Um, and the engine bolted to the ladder frame, to the chassis, as it's also known. I'm sorry I did not clear that up. Um, Chassis, the engine, transmission, or transaxle at one point, the tires, the brakes, and all the other stuff that help the car move. That stuff bolted to the lateral chassis, or you know that part. It's sometimes bolted between the two, between the chassis and the body itself. But I mean, you can look it up where guys literally take the entire bottom section, the entire bottom frame of a car, and take the body off and plop another one on. You know, definitely, an internet show, uh, somewhat famous called Roadkill. They actually have a spin-off show called Roadkill Garage. Uh, the presenters in that show did exactly what I just said. They plopped the body of another car on a frame, on a lateral frame, and kept the engine, transmission, differential, stuff like that. They kept all those things on the ladder frame and just plopped another body on top of it and, kind of bolted everything down and, you know, did a bro shake and called it a day. So that's very much a category here. It's a little bit out of the scope of what I know about. So unfortunately, I may get some stuff wrong. I'm gonna be very tedious about how I refer to things, and I'll try to look for the proper terminology and all that. But yes, that's a thing. Auto body and chassis design and repair, because believe it or not, sometimes the cars that you think are beyond saving, someone who knows about auto body and chassis design can be like, nope, that can be fixed. And it's like, wait, what? No, I mean, look at it. It's all crumpled up like a soda can. It's like, no, you can literally just pull a little bit here, pull a little bit there, and good as new. What? And you'd be very surprised if anyone really wants to delve into this. I highly encourage you to do it on your own. You're not gonna regret it. You're gonna come out there pretty amazed. You're gonna be like, whoa, I can't believe they can do that. Pretty crazy stuff. And then a final category that I almost slept on was interior design. The interior, the seats, the dashboard, the steering wheel, how all that's designed. Cars in Fallout 4 seem to have the same thing, the same parts, the same stuff for every single car. You know, have we ever done that in the real world? Have we not done that? Stuff like that. Um, but those are the 11 different categories in our real world cars. Now, I took the task of trying to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to break this down? Am I going to merge some of these categories because some of them kind of go with each other? Engine repair, engine performance being two of them. Uh, like, how am I going to tackle this? Well, I had to think long and hard about it, but I eventually was able to settle. And um, so engine repair and engine performance, like I just said, those spoiler, yeah, those are kind of one and the same. They're gonna fall in the same category. But also alongside the hybrid and fuel cell vehicles category, big surprise, yeah, that's gonna go in as well. I'm gonna be calling that Fallout powertrain. And powertrains being another word for engines, without having to really describe what kind of engine it is. If it's a gasoline, diesel, steam, even electrical, hydrogen, water. Apparently, there's a water engine somewhere out in the 70s, 80s, stuff like that, without having to call it an engine, because electrical uh, electricals are not electrical engines. I mean, we can call them that, but they're usually known as motors, electrical motors. So just as an overarching term, powertrain. So Fallout powertrains. That's where we get the power to power the car from. The next would be electrical and electronics. I plan on keeping that as its own separate thing because we can sit here for 2 hours straight and I probably will barely even touch that subject. Um, Heating and air conditioning. I kind of thought about throwing this in one of the other categories that I kind of cooked up, but I'm not. I'm gonna leave it as its own separate thing because I think there's enough that we can keep that its own separate category that will keep its name, heating and air conditioning. Um, the next two categories to be grouped up are manual drivetrain and axles and automatic transmission and transaxles. I'm going to be dubbing that Fallout drivetrain and drive lines. Um, really because those two words are kind of, one and the same, but they really work off each other and they really, anyone in the automotive sphere will tell you, yeah, that really does sum up transmissions in general without having to say, oh, a transmission or oh, a transaxle or oh, a manual transmission. You don't have to specify. If you really want to just call it a driveline. You want to just call that thing that moves the power from the engine to the wheels. It's a driveline or a drivetrain. So, you know, plus there's so many parts in that, so many different little working bits to it. So seems befitting. Um, After that, the biggest category that I have, because it is a merger of four different categories, um, and I'm giving it its name for a specific reason. The categories are going to be the auto body, chassis, design and repair, interior design, suspension and steering, and lastly, brakes. All four of those categories, I will be grouping them into a category I'm going to call the Fallout vehicle and ride design. Why that? Well, because it really encompasses everything. Because it's hard to talk about auto body and chassis designs without talking about the suspension of the car. The suspension and the way you steer it. But it's also hard to talk about those two without mentioning, oh, well, the brakes. Well, it's because, this is designed the way it is because you need to fit in, drums or you need to fit in disc brakes with disc pads or brake shoes. It's kind of, they kind of all four play into each other as well as interior design. Now, interior design kind of seems like an outlier, but trust me, it is not. Because once again, when we start talking about the auto body and the chassis design, it's like, well, how much space are we going to have inside the car? Is it going to be able to fit someone who is, say, 6 feet tall? Is it going to be, limited to people who are 5'10" and below? Is it going to be, you know, that very much plays because, the size of seats, which once again, it plays into the cars of Fallout because we really go from cars that seat one single person to cars that seat two people, cars that seem to have, a bench seat. Like it very much plays. There's a size of car for every type of person seemingly in the Fallout universe. If you're single, if you have, a significant other, or if you have a family, or you have an extended family, there seems to be a Fallout vehicle for you. Um, and really, that single name, it really just encompasses all four of those categories into one. Fallout vehicle and ride design. That really just encompasses all four categories. The interior, the body, the suspension, the brakes, it encompasses everything there. So, to sum up, the categories are as follows. Fallout powertrains, Fallout drivetrain and driveline, the Fallout vehicle and ride designs, um, Fallout electrical and electronic systems, which is kind of one to one with what we have in the real world. Um, Fallout heating and air conditioning systems or units, however you want to, call that. Um, Basically HVAC. Um, and that's it. Those are the 5 different categories of, you know, how I'm going to break down Fallout vehicles. Um, I I cannot say which one I'm going to break down first. I don't want to spoil it, but it is going to be a fun and interesting video. Um, I'm likely going to go ahead and go in that same order that I just listed them, with powertrains, then drivetrains and drivelines, and then vehicle and ride, and then electrical and heating and air conditioning. Um, Probably in that order. Um, but that will be the breakdown. I'm sure that some of you probably were wondering that. That's what it's going to be. Um, I'm going to take those 11 categories and shrink them down into 5, um, just for the sake of simplifying everything, kind of streamlining everything. Um, but yeah, that is going to be the way we tackle this. Um, should I make any changes? Should I add some things, split some things? Should I change anything? I'll be sure to post a small video referencing it. Um, but that is what I've got. Um, I can see once again this has gone on for about half an hour. I am sorry to take up so much time. Thank you all for listening. Please, if you've made it this far, please like, subscribe. Um, you know, if you hate anything about this video, if you hate, you want to, yell anything, go ahead, drop it in the comments. Any criticisms, any appraisals, please leave a comment. With that, I will see everyone in the next video.